Testing.
All right.
Testing.
1, 2, 3.
All right. Because it apparently got lost, the question that I just asked Mr. Lovecraft was if he had seen any of the Stuart Gordon adaptations of his work.
And my answer, of course, was that I've seen a number of them, but the one that impressed me the most was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
And why is that?
Well, French class, obviously.
Okay.
Can't argue with that logic.
Can't argue with that. And that leads me into another question, which is, since you have seen some of them, but not all, how do you feel about the, shall we say, enhanced sexual content of the Stuart Gordon films?
Yes, well, of course, Mr. Gordon is not the only one who looks at my works and suddenly has a flushing of blood flow. It seems to be a rather bizarre circumstance. People are drawn towards my stories and then decide to take them in a salacious manner and a direction. It's discomforting, to say the least, but, well, who am I to judge?
True, but you do have to admit there's a lot of birthing and copulation imagery that can be placed within the context, particularly when we're speaking of, say, Father Dagon and Mother Hydra, or Shub-Niggurath, the goat of 1,000 young.
Yes, and?
Okay, then. All right.
Look, Lovecraft knows what he likes.
My.
So it's also come to my attention that you have recently been reunited somewhat with your estranged ex-wife.
Yes, it seems that for reasons that don't really bear going into, Sonia is back from wherever she went, and we are trying to, if not necessarily patch everything up, at least find some form of peaceful rapport. There's a lot of unfinished business.
I can imagine. I can imagine. The history books tell a tale of a very strained relationship, you know. And as a person myself who has who is not a foreigner to such things, like I definitely think that it's an interesting tale to witness a relationship that, while there may be love, does not quite work. Would you say that would be true of your relationship with Sonia?
Well, there's been a lot of speculation. Sonia and I had a rather unorthodox courtship. Our marriage was very sudden, and of course, the entire affair ended rather sooner than one might expect. But all throughout it, I must say that I deeply respected her. She was a powerful figure in her own right, and I think history has been cruel to relegate her as a sort of, I don't know, a bit player or secondary to my own narrative. She's not merely Mrs. Lovecraft. I mean, Sonia is a fierce, powerful woman in her own right and should be, well, appreciated as such. I think it is a disservice to her and, well, to many women, of course, to be known merely as Mrs. this or that. So now that Sonia is back from wherever she went, I trust she will make her mark known very quickly and very powerfully.
Wonderful. Like that actually brings up a bit of a historical context for your own life, which is you lived through the suffragette movement, didn't you?
Yes. I mean, I didn't, attend all the rallies, and it didn't happen all around me, but yes, I was aware of it going on.
Would you say that there was a big a radical shift that was going on outside of that political argument itself that filtered into daily life?
Well, it was hard to avoid it all. I mean, I was living through such remarkable changes. I mean, just think about how the size and scale of our understanding of the cosmos changed. When I was born, the universe was about this big. By the time I died, well, it was the size of Ohio. It is beyond understanding. I think the only thing that comes close in your modern day-to-day life is perhaps seeing how communications technology or the computational software technology has changed and evolved at a radical pace. I mean, that's what was happening to us, but with the very nature of reality itself, and I think that had a rather funny effect on people, especially over in continental Europe, where they're already a little bit.
Yes, it's a different world over there, definitely. Related to, but not quite analogous to our own.
Right.
So, where did your family come from?
Well, class and dignity, of course.
Have you, did your family, what generation New Englander were you?
Oh, well, I mean, we had been in New England going back ages. I mean, we were good Rhode Island stock. I mean, you can go back to the family records and you can see that we were there right at the very beginning, something I take great pride in.
Yes, I actually had the good fortune of going to Rhode Island a few years back, and one of the things that struck me was the difference in the pronunciation of specific words. My favorite being the way that Rhode Islanders pronounce the word weird, which seems to have been contracted into wed.
Well, yes. They're very economical people.
Yes, we seem to have we've condensed an entire extra vowel sound. That's economic. Bleh. That's the economy of scale on a level that is hard to conceive.
Well, you have to understand that Rhode Island is a busy place, and people have places to go in very fast cars and can't be, obeying things like traffic laws or, where the pedestrians are in front of them. And as such, they're going to do what it takes to cut a few corners, including linguistically as well.
I see. Another thing, I hope you don't mind if I have a drink.
By all means. I, of course, never touch the stuff.
Actually, quite famously so. There's been very clear accounts of your life have been very clear on the fact that you are not a man who drank or smoked, but surely there must have been some vices in your life.
Yeah. The vices that have been recorded, of course, have been spoken about rather vehemently in recent days, but they probably are best not to go into. My legal counsel advises me not to make any statements on them at this time.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, we can't go against legal counsel. That would,
Fair enough, sir.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I do have a personal question, though, if you don't mind.
Go on.
Do you regret not having children?
No, not. I don't regret not having biological children. I mean, of course, it'd been curious to see just what they would have looked like, but knowing my own genetic predispositions, I think probably the world was best being spared them. But really, the children I do have are my stories and their legacy. The people I mentored and wrote to voluminously, my literary successes, of course, but also just it seems that my words have gone forth and populated themselves. They've infected people like a virus and gone on to create their own works, their own films, their own stories, their own works of art, their own graphic depictions. And that is my legacy, more than mere biology. It is a sort of mimetic propagation, and I'm at times very proud, and at other times deeply disturbed, which, from what I gather, is what parenting is like.
Yes, it seems very appropriate. In many ways, the mythos that you created became its own Shub-Niggurath, which spawned 1,000 young.
Quite.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lovecraft, for answering some of our questions. I think it would probably behoove us to once again speak to Leeman.
My absolute pleasure. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Good day, good sir.
So for those of you who are not familiar, Leeman here does a show on YouTube called Ask Lovecraft. You should check it out. It's really good. It's a weekly show. You ask H.P. Lovecraft a question, and he answers it in character. And actually, the funny thing is, it reminds me of a more... I don't know what the word for it. Uncensored is not quite the right word, but a more... Do you remember when you were in school and sometimes an actor would come to the school pretending to be a historical figure? Yeah, It's a lot like that, but much less restrained by what you have to not say in a classroom.
Well, I haven't been asked to come to schools yet. I did get to give a lecture at the college that I live at now, but that was not in character. That was me talking about Lovecraft and really talking about how, as an actor, you sort of deal with the more unsavory elements of Lovecraft, as he alluded to his sort of racist vitriol and whatnot.
Yeah, was that that article that you wrote that you sent me? Was that part of that?
Yeah. So I wrote a while back. I wrote an article called on portraying a white supremacist, and that was just kind of my own personal kind of detailing some of the issues that I run into playing Lovecraft, and the talk I gave was based a little bit on that, but I was sort of trying to make it its own thing, dealing with a lot of the arguments I run into about just about having the conversation about Lovecraft and his racism. There's a great deal of, I don't know if I want to call it ennui or just exhaustion in the Lovecraftian communities, and discomfort. I mean, there's a discomfort with talking about it. I think people are worried that if someone says, "Hey, there's some of the stuff is really racist," then people fear, "Oh, but this is someone that I've been reading since high school, and like he means so much to me. I don't want to be tarred with racism because I know I'm not a racist, but I still like this stuff." And I think people need to get over that and need to be willing to have this conversation, because people are going to constantly be discovering Lovecraft and be having to deal with his unsavory elements. As I mentioned in the talk, when people stop talking about Lovecraft's racism, it's not going to be because, we've said all there is to be said. It's going to be because no one else has discovered Lovecraft. It just means he's going to be forgotten. Like that's what that means.
That's what's troubling, considering like the contribution. Like one of me and Horror Guru deal primarily with film, and film is filled with figures that are like that. Like from the very beginning, like D.H. White, that is a big issue.
You mean D.W. Griffith?
Sorry, D.W. Griffith. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, or or with Roman Polanski or Woody Allen. I mean, there's this huge argument about how do you separate art from artist, and can you even? And with Lovecraft, it's made even more complex, because it's not just Lovecraft's works that inspire people. Lovecraft himself is a figure. I mean, they call it Lovecraftian fiction. You have the Lovecraft e-zine. You have these Lovecraft film festivals. I mean, we're not just saying weird fiction or weird fiction or, cosmic horror. We're talking, the name Lovecraft has cachet and power, and Lovecraft himself is this kind of nerd, right? This guy who was a high school dropout, who was self-taught, who was seemingly socially awkward, but actually not really, like was incredibly verbose and able to communicate with a variety of different people. Wasn't necessarily someone who was going out partying all the time, but not the kind of deranged shut-in that he sometimes is portrayed as.
He wasn't like a Unabomber kind of guy.
No, but I think people take a lot from him and are inspired by him, and then when you come across that poem, or you read Rats in the Walls and you find the name of that cat. There's a defensiveness, right? And I don't need to tell you guys this, but horror is a very white male genre. I mean, there's a lot of women, there's a lot of people of color, but look at this group right here. There are two pasty white guys,
and one partially and one half Asian guy, which when you go to horror in Asia, it's of course very different. But
I'm speaking in a North American context.
So. Well, one of the things I find very, very interesting is that while the portrayals of the genre tend to cluster around, the funny thing is I actually find that what horror is really, why it is that way, is it's absolutely not on purpose for the most part. I mean, you can find examples, but it's really just has to do with who was middle class. Who was middle class in America, and that's kind of where that all comes from. But one of the things that we discovered in recent years, and this is where it got really interesting, is that horror in the black community, the American black community, is extremely important. It's massively important, but they're not represented in the fandom. And so I did some poking around because I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, it's not like they're being... Oh, is the internet giving us trouble?
No, we're fine.
Okay. It's not that... It doesn't seem like they've been pushed out deliberately. So I was like, so something else going on. And it turns out the closest we could come to finding an answer came from a guy we know, Mr. X, who is black, and a couple of other friends that I have who are black kind of pretty much backed him up, which is like, yeah, here's the thing about horror in the black community. One, you got to understand, every black guy, every black kid loves watching Whitey get it. And horror is always about that, if nothing else. Whatever, even if the black guy dies first, you know, Whitey gets it in the end. You know, the other part is because it's an accepted part of the culture, no one makes a big deal about it because no one has to defend it within the culture. So they don't even talk about it. It's just like, oh yeah, we love Freddy movies. Yeah, we love Friday the 13th. Like, of course Halloween's great. They don't have to defend it within their own community, so it's just assumed, and so nobody talks about it, so they don't feel the need to band together into a tribal fandom because, well, what's the point? Now, I'm sure that's not the entire truth, but I thought that was a really, really interesting piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that, you know, the fights that I see surrounding Lovecraft's racism, and especially they exploded with the whole World Fantasy Award.
Oh yeah,
you know, they're happening at the same time as we're seeing, you know, the Gamergate fights, as we're seeing the like kind of fights over comic books and diversity in comic books. And I really feel like there has to be some, you know, simmering cultural thing that's happening. And one thing that I note, and I see a lot, is especially in online spaces, is this fight over what I feel is the notion of safe space. And I think for a long time, folks were looking at online communities as kind of, you know, boys clubs, you know, locker rooms where they could kind of, you know, make their off-color jokes, make their rape jokes, put up their naughty pictures, you know, drop some N-bombs, and not feel judged, not feel like anyone's going to come at them. And then you've got women and people of color who have to deal with that constantly, who are looking for spaces where they don't have to deal with that. And there's this conflict of, I want a safe space where I'm not going to be judged and no one's going to call me a creep for, you know, showing some half-naked anime chick. And people looking for safe spaces where they're not having to just, you know, feel like they're walking through a Maxim, you know, magazine.
Yeah, well, the funny thing
like
is,
their daily life.
I actually have a theory on that. Now, it's a non-scientific personal theory, but it just has to happen with when that argument started to occur, which is, I think what happened is before the internet more or less had dozens of safe spaces that were constantly shifting around. Like the old forum days, you were banded together by a topic. And if you're banded together by a topic, you can, of course, like have a lot of racism and a lot of sexism. But there was really not a lot to stop you from branching off and doing your own thing and creating your own space where very few people were going to bother you. But then Facebook happened.
Yes.
That changed everything because now everyone was in one big space.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you had to deal with those problems, but the problem was we couldn't go backwards. You know?
Well, not unless you want to go to Stormfront or something, you know.
Exactly. Like, we didn't really have the option of going backwards because Facebook had taken over so much. All of the old internet had pretty much been destroyed. It was pretty much gone away. So you couldn't retreat back to the safe spaces you used to have because they were gone. And now if you wanted to interact online, you had to be in this one big pool, and that was going to be a lot trickier. I hate to wax nostalgic, but I kind of I wish we didn't have to lose that, because I think it's really important that we have a space where we are both public and with each other, and a space where, like, we're kind of figuring out, you know, things emotionally and privately, and where we're going to say things that aren't necessarily polite, even if just to get to the truth of ourselves.
Well, isn't that what 4chan and those sort of anonymous places are for? I mean,
sometimes they are. But one of the problems with those is that, despite what a lot of people think, those are also very large communities. They don't seem as diverse, but they're a lot more diverse than people think they are. And that's where it gets really strange, because it's like, the thing that's interesting about like 4chan and even like Something Awful and Reddit is that the main tool that they all have that Facebook doesn't is anonymity. Because they have anonymity, they have a degree of protection against judgment, public judgment. But on Facebook, you have no such protection. So if you're just saying something to get a rise out of people, or are having a tough time and just trying to reach out, but like say you're really awful at it, you don't have the space on Facebook to really figure that out, because everything is so public. Everyone jumps on you immediately. So you have like these two halves to the internet, one that is super anonymous and one that is not. And they're coming into conflict with each other constantly. And I don't know if that's going, that might just be the way the internet is going forward, because I don't know how that's going to change. I think individuals I think will change, but like the gestalt, I don't know if it will.
Well, I mean, also you never know, right? I mean, let's look at what's changed in the last 10 years in online space. I mean, we're still in early days, right? Yeah. I mean, you want to go back to like, ICQ groups and
oh man, yeah,
and BBSs. I mean, like I know folks who are still in the same like, they have Facebook groups based on old BBSs, that they were in. So, like there is like a bizarre continuity that exists there. But also, it's interesting. I mean, we think about Facebook as this big open place, but there are still bizarre little tide pools. Like if you ever want to be just like completely sort of, thrown for your gourd, go to any Facebook group that's like, arrest President Obama, or we support X and X, police officer who shot a black kid these days. Like there are still bizarre little pockets where you're like, people believe this sort of stuff. Like there's a publicity, but there's not a publicity. Although I do love the feature of Facebook where you can just type in people who like insert odious thing here, and you can see like how many of your friends are secretly fans of the Turner Diaries or things like that. So, or usually what it is, it's friends of friends. So you're like, do you realize how many closet Nazis you're hanging out with, Steve?
Well, I came from a despite the fact that I'm only like half Caucasian, like I did come from like a poor, a lower class like white neighborhoods. And if you come from a lower class white neighborhood, you've encountered neo-Nazis. Whether or not you like them, you have had encounters with them. There are probably some in your family, or at least are somehow connected. Oh yeah. And it's one of those things where one of the things I think is really, really, really sad. Because I was always that asshole that kept asking questions. I would always ask these people. Whenever I found like a neo-Nazi, I'd be like, all right, you got to tell me all about this, because this doesn't make any sense to me. And I didn't take a lot of bullshit, because I guess I was just born a really ballsy teenager. And the thing that I found that I thought was really dark, like this is one of those like, oh, this is at the heart of it, and this is dark, 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 is this. Most of the people that join these neo-Nazi groups know that they're awful and hateful. Like they absolutely know it, but because there are people who are willing to say it's okay that you're hating on a black person, even if you only kind of sorta but not really think they're like terrible people, that's better, that living with the guilt of that hate is better than the rest of your fucking life, because it's so awful.
Well, I mean that's been the lie of white supremacy, right? I mean, we want to go back to Lovecraft. Lovecraft existed at a time when I think we take for granted the notion that white supremacy or racism is a natural state, and it's not. It's an artificial ideology that serves a very useful purpose, and a big part of that purpose is to let poor white people know, well, you may be bad and you're screwed because I've been kind of, economically stepping on your neck for the last 3 generations. But hey, at least you're not black, right?
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
worth
yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that allows
Yeah,
folks
for
to do, I
real.
mean, my family was really touched by this because, my father, my grandfather were in Mississippi during segregation, and,
Ooh.
were speaking out against it, and they got their names marked as enemy of the state. If you ever want to be creeped out, look up the Sovereignty Commission. The
Oh
Sovereignty
yeah.
Commission was this creepy organization that it was in Mississippi. It may have been in a couple of other places, but essentially it was a semi-governmental secret, like the closest thing you can come to is like an SS type of organization that was keeping track of troublesome people, monitoring them, sending their names to the police, making notes against them in case the time came and people needed to be rounded up or
Yeah.
dealt with. Like this was happening in our country, in America, the land of the free, during the 60s. Like this is not something that was taking place in the 1860s or, so this stuff, this idea of white supremacy and racism as being something from the past, or, like, why are we talking about all this? The Civil War was 100 so many years ago. No, like this stuff still has
Yeah.
repercussions.
Well,
This stuff
yeah,
is
100 years socially speaking is nothing.
Yeah,
You know?
so and this is why I feel it's very, very important, and especially as someone who makes money off of Lovecraft, right? Like
Right, right.
Lovecraft is a brand. Cthulhu is the McDonald's arches of the horror world.
Yeah. In many ways.
And
Actually, I prefer to think of it. Actually, I prefer to think of it as like the Mickey Mouse.
yes, precisely. And so I think it's really important for those of us in this community, those of us who are writing stories or making films or in any way profiting off of it, to be as exposed and open about the more sordid aspects of things. Otherwise, I almost feel like you need to recuse yourself. Like if you're like, well, let's not kill the golden cow. Like I think that's really sketchy, right? Like people defending his racism, who are receiving a hefty check, on his name. That's dicey.
Yeah.
That's sketchy in a lot of ways. So that's yeah.
You had mentioned Roman Polanski, and I'm a big fan of Roman Polanski's movies, but at the same time, I'm like, no, he raped that girl. It's obvious, like he didn't have to be. And a lot of people ask me, well, like, how do you separate it? And I'm like, well, here's the interesting thing about Polanski. Polanski is one of those cases where it's very easy to separate his work from his actions because it doesn't really come up in his work. Raping a 15-year-old does not generally come up in his work, but there are examples of people who have done things, and like Mel Gibson's a great example. You cannot get away from what he is in his work. It's all over the place. And it's weird because you wouldn't think it would be until you start noticing it. You're like, wait, why is Jesus in everything? Weird, Mel. This is getting really weird. And so it's uncomfortable. But with Polanski, thankfully, raping 15-year-olds is not really a big part of his oeuvre, so easier to separate it.
No, but I think but I mean, at the same time, I think you have to be aware of this stuff, and you have to be
Absolutely.
uncomfortable with it and willing to be uncomfortable with it, and to say, I love, what was it, Gods of Carnage, or the one what was the movie he just did with it's completely gone out of my head, with the John C. Wright and
I actually don't know. But
the guy and the Jew hunter from Inglourious Bastards. Oh, what was it? Anyway,
you mean
you can love Polanski's Macbeth. You can love Polanski's work, but still, to keep in mind not only what he did, but also to remember the Sharon Tate murders. Like there's who the rape and murder scene in Macbeth. People constantly point to how that's him working through and showing and exposing like what was happening during the Sharon Tate and the Manson murders.
Oh yeah.
And so you can't then separate, like, this stuff is all there and it's messy, but life is messy and heroes are messy. And
yes.
Like the more we can all be comfortable with that, or comfortable with our own discomfort, I think that's really, really important. And, saying, oh, I love Polanski's Macbeth. It's not the same as saying I, agree that the celebrities should be allowed to do whatever they want. And
Oh yeah,
it doesn't
absolutely.
matter. Like
Yeah.
those, we understand that those are separate things.
The movie we were
But-
thinking of was Carnage,
Carnage, thank
or God of Carnage, depending upon where you saw it. So there you
Ah,
go.
okay.
It's one of those movies with an alternate title. Oh man, so many of those.
Well, it's called God of Carnage in some territories because that is the play it's based on. So they just literally took the play's title and.
Oh, so the play had a different title.
Well, that is the play's title is God of Carnage, whereas the movie is called Carnage, but some places just called it God of Carnage.
Got it. Okay. Oh man. Yeah, it's so I gotta Leeman, I gotta ask, the woman who did the Sonya video, was that someone you knew, or did she just
No.
randomly?
That is this random actress from, I want to say somewhere out in Indiana or somewhere, who sent that in. I think she maybe had like sent in some questions beforehand because her name was a little familiar, but no, just suddenly, I woke up and went and checked my email, and there was this link to an unlisted video, and I was blown away.
Yeah, it was really good.
And it really, so this last week was the first time I'd ever really done like a quote unquote storyline on Ask Lovecraft. I've done kind of continuous episodes where it's been a live show, or when I've done when I've had Lovecraft playing board games or Darkest Dungeons. I've done sort of continuous things like that, but this was the first time I'd ever done like kind of 3 episodes that all linked together that had kind of literal beginning, middle, and end. And that was all like I think I got the video from her on like Friday or Saturday, and then Sunday, I filmed the first, and so it completely threw off what I was going to do for the week, and the response has been great. It's been people have been very, 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 very positive about it, and I had a lot of fun. This is one of the most fun and the most proud I am of some of the work I've done on Ask Lovecraft. I have no idea how inviting or relatable it is to people.
I think it's extremely relatable.
Who are new to the show.
Yeah, I think it's extremely relatable, actually, especially if like that little that Lovecraft was related to a woman named Sonya.
And this all began because of a play about Lovecraft and his wife. Back in 2010, my friend Stephen Neer wrote a play called Monstrous Invisible, and it started as a short one act, and it's kind of grown ever since. But I did the first and second iteration of it, so kind of a 10-minute version and like a 40-minute version. And it was about their marriage and their relationship. And it's a beautiful play. I did a staged reading of it at the Necronomicon convention in Providence this last summer. And yeah, it's a simple two-hander, about the two of them, and it's sort of looking at their marriage as a horror story, like something that just like this tale where everything went wrong. And it was a beautiful play, and Stephen based it a lot on what letters that could be found. Sonya destroyed a lot of their personal correspondence, but there was enough kind of information that he was able to build off of, and it was so to be able to tackle Sonya again and the subject of Sonya was a lot of fun, and I got to do 2 silly episodes and a serious episode, which made it gave it a fun texture and a fun rhythm.
Yeah. I actually find, particularly in YouTube shows, like I really like serious episodes, but I feel like a little goes a long way.
Yeah.
You don't want to get too serious. I've seen a lot of shows that got like super serious, and then it was like, now I'm not watching anymore.
Well, and I have to be careful because I have these little, 2-3 minute snippets, and who knows what people are going to find. And, the character is such that comedy is an easier route to take so much of the time.
Yeah.
My very first serious episode was when I got a letter from someone saying, Dear Mr. Lovecraft, I'm such a huge fan of your work, and I'm really excited to, to talk to you. I understand that you died of cancer. Well, my boyfriend is dying of cancer. What can you tell him?
Whoa.
And, you don't want to just sort of put that in the to be answered later pile. You kind of want to get that out there. But you also don't know, is this a hoax? Is this like because there was future sketchiness from this sender. But
not to mention the question of what do you say to that?
Well, as someone who has never had cancer, you know, you don't want to be like, well, let me tell you, little lady. And you don't want to be super snarky or silly about it. And someone's like, well, why don't you just sort of read some of Lovecraft's, letters talking about it? Well, all Lovecraft said was, ow, 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 this hurts. And he actually did, he did a really fascinating thing of sort of detailing and writing down sort of what he was experiencing in those final months. He sort of kept very meticulous sort of notes about that. But it's not necessarily something you can, he didn't have any profound statements on it. It just
right. It's
not
life advice. It's more just documenting what happened.
Yeah. So I essentially just, I copped out and said, well, there are no words. But you know what? But that got a lot of positive response as well. And I think,
that is an honest response. Like, and often when a person is doing that, they're just looking for connection, and that kind of statement, even a simple statement, can provide it. I'm not a believer in using as many words as possible to communicate an idea. Sometimes fewer is way better.
Yeah, and I think to tie it into this notion of writing and a person who lives by their words, and what do you do when there are no words? And it worked, and I think I earned it. That was very early on. That was in my first year, which is a very different. This was back when I was, holding my flip cam and doing sort of selfie in front of my bed sheet. So that was very, very early on in the run of Ask Lovecraft. If I got a question like that now, I don't quite know. I don't know what I would do. That'd probably wind up in to be answered far, far distant future. I'm all about kicking these things down the road. But it's most of the questions I get on Ask Lovecraft tend to be pop culture related. Most of them tend to be, Dear Mr. Lovecraft, what do you think about Star Wars? What do you think about Star Trek? What do you think about My Little Pony? And it's fun trying to figure out, okay, what would Lovecraft think about My Little Pony? And how can I make an Equus joke so I can really alienate my listeners and viewers? But I got into this because I was hoping to do sort of an advice column in a Dear Abby and have people write in with actual sort of personal, things. But I wasn't expecting them to be that serious.
Yeah. You're expecting to be like, Johnny hasn't asked me to the prom. What do I do?
Well, you tell Johnny that he's a rotten zoog.
Yeah, no, not Johnny got hit by a car on the way to prom. What?
Yeah.
Can you give me some words of comfort or whatever?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, one of the things I thought. So you've been living with the Lovecraft, your version of Lovecraft, for quite some time. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I did the play in 2010. And then again in 2011, and then I sort of put the character down until Derek the Bard, asked me to do, because he had seen the play. He'd asked me to bring the character back in 2012, and that really jump-started and got me interested in trying to do something with Lovecraft. And I'd been thinking about wanting to do a sort of a YouTube show. I wasn't sure what. I wasn't kind of I'd like to do something, but buried far, far in my back catalog is a bunch of Christopher Walken impersonations that I thought was going to be my key to internet fame. So yeah, those exist. That's out there. But no, then I found this Lovecraft character, and I was really fortunate to be living in Toronto, which had access to this amazing library called the Merrill Collection, which is a big sci-fi, fantasy, horror library. And they had a bunch of, not the originals, but a bunch of the compiled and edited letters of Lovecraft to Robert E. Howard, to August Derleth, just tons of these things. And so I was able to, take a few afternoons and sit down and just read a whole bunch of Lovecraft's letters. And that's where I found his voice. I mean, I'd read his stories, playing the character. I'd gone through and I read, while I was working at my bookstore, in between customers, I was reading Lovecraft stories. But it wasn't until I found his letters that I found his voice, because, in his, I think, again, like, as I've said before, there's a tendency to think, oh, Lovecraft wrote all this weird, dark stuff, and he must have believed in aliens and demons and things like that. No, anyone who has sort of a cursory understanding of Lovecraft knows he was a hyper rationalist and atheist, and believed in science and believed in the supremacy of reason and objective observable reality, except when it came to racial science.
Yeah, I was about to say, and white people, but
and then in these letters you find this, and again, this temptation to see him as someone who was afraid of people and who was cowering in his den, this shut-in, when he was very friendly and catty and yet self-effacing and playful and charming and super racist. but there was this multitude of qualities that he inhabited, and it was just. And the thing I really tapped into was that kind of self-effacing sense of humor, which is great if you're playing a character, right? If you're able to kind of, sort of make fun of yourself, but have a bit of injured pride when it really matters. When you can play that up, that's a ton of fun. And when you can also just sort of, pull out the claws a little bit on various contemporaries.
Yeah, actually. Oh, go on, man.
I was just about to say that the chat is requesting to hear one of these walk-in impressions. I don't know if you're up to that, but they're requesting it.
All right, let me go grab something.
We are live, ladies and gentlemen.
So I mentioned that I worked in a bookstore. So that's where this came from. I would grab a book and start doing Christopher Walken's interpretation. Bang, zoom, all these kids were flying around, shooting lasers. Some of them are bugs. I don't know. Stop it. So, there you go. That's
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Yeah. Actually, I did have a question on Lovecraft. Were you inspired by Colin Clive's performance in Frankenstein?
I have not seen Colin Clive's performance in Frankenstein, so...
Oh, okay. So, no.
Which Frankenstein is this?
The Boris Karloff one.
Oh, it's alive!
Yeah.
No, the voice... I'll get a lot of people, and I get a lot of people right now because the H.P. Lovecraft official fan page just shared my 2-year-old reading of The Raven.
Oh, nice.
And people got really upset because they thought it was an actual recording of H.P. Lovecraft, and then they saw me. They're like, who's this guy doing a stupid British accent? And I get a lot of people thinking I'm trying to do a British accent, and I'm not. What I'm trying to do is a Frasier accent. Because
New England,
well, not even quite New England, but this sort of semi-mid-Atlantic. But it's this messy thing that I developed for the stage. I needed a voice that I could project with, and I didn't want to do a sort of a broad New England, sort of thing because that just didn't feel right. So I got this sort of somewhat clipped but still kind of throaty, accent, and it sort of developed out of there. And it's almost like you're doing a British accent, but you're still keeping, the American gutturalness, as opposed to being, hello, I'm Howard Phillips Lovecraft, and I'm ever so excited to be here. But the truth of the matter is, from all accounts, Lovecraft, much like Abraham Lincoln, had a high-pitched, reedy voice. So if I wanted to go full Lovecraft, and you never go full Lovecraft, it would be something like, the most graceful thing about the world is that we're unable to deal with the horrors that exist in our very mind. And I just, as the person who wrote of the Call of Cthulhu, I really want people to understand just what I'm doing here.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't work too well.
I don't think people would be fond of that. And I would shoot myself with a gun in the head. So...
Fair enough. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I was that one episode you did. That was the first one where I went, oh, that was a great moment. Was I think someone had asked. There's a big lead up to the actual question, and I believe the question is, what do you miss from your your old writer days? And your response was, I miss Robert.
Oh,
referring to Robert E. Howard.
Yeah,
I was like, that was good.
Yeah, and that's I I don't know. I like obviously poking fun at Lovecraft, and I like this bizarre sort of homunculus parody I've created. But like with this Sonia episode, like with the cancer episode, when I can remind folks of that humanity, and I think it's essential that we remember humanity, especially of monsters.
Oh yes,
it's why I love the movie Mats so much. I think movies that can deal with flawed, broken, evil people. And I don't know if I necessarily go so far as to say Lovecraft was evil. He said some pretty evil things. You can't casually suggest the fumigation and extirpation of the Indian subcontinent without being a little gross. But I think finding that humanity and finding that connection is important. And as an actor, you're never supposed to judge your character. You must present your character without any top down, any sense of judgment. But you're going to judge a character because you're human. And I think what's important is to, be honest. And that's why I don't do one of two things. I never go full Lovecraft, because you never go full Lovecraft, and make in my show essentially something that can only be viewed by white supremacists. But I also don't have Lovecraft be like, what? I've been reading a lot of this Martin Luther King, and I think that it's time for me to put aside my racist ways. Because that's weird.
That's like being dishonest in a completely different way.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. And that is a whitewashing, right? That is saying all it takes is this, this magical conversion thing, and racism goes away. Poof. No. So I try to be very, very careful in the line that I toe. And so far it works. So far, we'll see.
I remember when the World Fantasy Award thing came up. The funny thing was people were like, "Oh, we're getting rid of Lovecraft," and the funny thing was that my initial question was not the one that was usually asked, which is, well, what are you going to replace it with? Because I do not want to see that award just become another stupid hunk of glass.
Yeah. Octavia Butler was who the person who wrote the petition to replace it, Daniel Jose Older. And other people had talked about it before, but I think he was the one who really got the ball going and the conversation going. He suggested Octavia Butler. That's who we need to replace it with. Let's take an old white man and replace him with a proud black woman. And that created all sorts of that brought different kinds of awkward racism to the forefront.
Yeah.
And then you have the people saying, oh, it should be a chimera, it should be a dragon, it should be something. It's the World Fantasy Award. It should just be George R. R. Martin killing people. But yeah, luckily the conversation is going forward, and it is changing now. And it'll be interesting to see what it gets changed to. I think I'm like you. I would prefer it to be something more interesting than just a giant glass phallus.
That's the thing I don't want, because so many of those awards are now just like, hey, it's like a column of glass with a fucking thing cut at an angle. It's boring. Like if they wanted to go with to me, the natural place to go would have been Lord Dunsany, but who knows what they're going to pick.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? I think there's going to be a huge impulse to not pick up human. Yeah. I do like someone who suggested a pewter wizard, angry pewter wizard. That's who it should be. Cheap fantasy art.
Yeah. Just some version of some Gandalf inspired guy. That'd be good. That'd work.
And I've told them if they want to use my face I'm my phone. They have my number. I think that's an amazing way they can make all sides happy. It's Lovecraft, but it's not technically Lovecraft. So, I'm waiting, WFA.
Oh, man. You met, your introduction to this whole thing really was Derek.
Yeah.
All right. For some of you who may not know, a while back, there was a gentleman named Derek the Bard that did a show that was mentioned before, which was Chasing the Muse, where I don't really know if he had a particular thing he did, but
sort of just pop cultural reviews, books, games, movies. He did some playthroughs, I think.
Yeah. He just did whatever.
He's been doing Let's Plays of Fallout 4 lately.
And of course, there's his Mutork playthroughs from Skyrim and whatnot.
Oh man, you know. Yeah, I remember. Like, I remember when we were all on that Channel Awesome forum together.
Well, he was the one who both got me started with Ask Lovecraft by having me be on Chasing the Muse, and then he's the reason I'm in Channel Awesome because he told me about the big producer contest. And I thought, well, I've got this video, I'll just throw in a couple and see if they're interested. And sure enough, they were interested. And it's been interesting being in Channel Awesome, and that's an example of these weird internet tide pools, right? Because I think I was vaguely familiar with Doug, like I'd seen some, shares here and there, but wasn't, didn't know this world at all. And then as soon as the veil was pulled back, I saw, oh, this is this huge world with, people like, huge fan base and, thousands of views. Like it was absolutely, whoa, this is, I felt out of my league in a lot of ways. And it was an interesting coming into it with a very different show than what was, what seemed to have been traditionally there. I remember a lot of the early comments were like, this show isn't long enough. And I'm like, well, I can't do a half an hour long As Lovecraft, people. Yeah. I know that's what you're used to. But I've only got 3 or 4 jokes in me that I can get out. So it was a lot of fun, and it's been a huge blast. And it definitely, it's exploded people's awareness of me. I have my own TV tropes page now, thanks to you guys. And also it's been really helpful to just, kind of be in a community of creators. And because I'm not doing reviewed content, it's different from other folks. But still, it's good to kind of be able to touch base and talk about experiences and challenges, and that's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, well, I remember when it was announced that you got on, and my initial thought was like, oh, hey, we'll have an actual actor around. Because most of us
I spend time with actors. That's a hit and miss situation.
Well, yeah. But I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's like, hey, real talent. Yeah. Because most of us either came from the critic world or the filmmaking world, which is, obviously a talent all its own, but it's not the same thing as focusing on a performance.
Yeah, and the acting in Ask Lovecraft is very strange because it is this semi-improvised. I get questions and I kind of mull them over, but until I get in front of the camera, they're not written. I've kind of practiced in my head, but I don't write anything down. And then so I have those, and then I have the live shows, which are similar to kind of the beginning of this, where I'm just sort of in front of a crowd being asked questions. I don't know what they'll be, and I have to think of answers, off the top of my head. And that's a lot of fun, and that draws on some of my improv training, sort of informal improv. I haven't done any of the big master classes or, done Second City or things like that. But it's fun to have. That's why I love this project, right? It allows me to do a lot of different things. It allows me to both do the regular meat and potatoes, 3 times a week show that I do. It allows me to do the live shows. It allows me to talk to really cool people who are interested in my nonsense, which is a lot of fun. And I'm excited to see kind of where it goes.
I think at this point, I'm gonna let's open up more questions to the audience. Now, this is gonna take a few minutes to filter through because of the delay. But go ahead and everyone in the chat, go ahead and ask either Leeman, myself, or Horguru any question you want, and I promise I won't just constantly be destroying my pop filter here. Hang on.
You do what you got to do.
Promise now.
I promise now, but I'm a fucking liar. I just.
Alrighty then. The cartoon physicist Naughty List asks, question for Jack.
Oh.
In one of the previous live streams, you mentioned possibly including a transformation sequence if you had the budget.
Yes.
I'm curious, what would a Draculon look like when not human?
Oh. Well, let me put it this way. That one is saved for either the moment we can do it, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen, or the moment I actually do a concept drawing of it and I'm like, you know what? We're never going to be able to do this, so I'm just going to show you what they look like when they don't look human. And it is definitely one of those images in my head where I'm like, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And I keep trying to pare it down. The problem is that no matter how I pare it down, it's still more money than we got. So hopefully you'll see it one day, but don't hold your breath. You'll fucking die of asphyxiation.
Will Witcher asks, "Come on, Eileen is good."
It's awesome.
Great song. What are you talking about? Dixie's Midnight Runner is going to be around forever.
Ethan
Amazing
Tone
sequence on Spaced.
Ethan Tone wants to know if Jack and I saw The Boy yet, which we have not.
No, we
so
don't.
there you go.
Haven't been so lucky, although we probably should.
Justin McField wants to ask Lovecraft, do you think Hollywood could do a Lovecraft movie true justice anymore?
Maybe. I mean, what's interesting about Lovecraft, is this idea of indescribable horror, right? He created these monsters that are indescribable on the page. So how would you then put them on film? And I was just at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival in Portland, Oregon, and I saw a wide variety of attempts at doing Lovecraft or Lovecraftian sort of stuff on film, and it can be done. Like there was a great French like cop drama that was a sort of Call of Cthulhu-esque story that was beautifully told, and it was weird and discomforting and a lot of fun. And then Mill at Calder's End. If no one has seen that, see Mill at Calder's End. That is just a beautiful, beautiful story, and it's not like I would say it definitely ties into the kind of Lovecraftian mythos. Like it's not explicitly Lovecraftian, but definitely there's elements of it, this sort of cursed genealogy and things like that. So it can be done. Whether or not we'll ever see Guillermo del Toro and Mountains of Madness, I don't know. But I'm excited, and it's always interesting, and it always creates more interest. And it's just like True Detective was a huge net boon for the weird fiction world, because it sort of raised awareness of Ligotti and Chambers and Lovecraft as well.
They straight up used The King in Yellow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, I, as someone who, as I said, makes money off of Lovecraft, anything that creates brand awareness of Lovecraft is only good in my books.
All right. Rick Classic asks, "Hey, Mr. Kessler, I enjoy the show a lot. I'd like to ask, what was the impetus for the character of H.P. Lovecraft?"
It was this play called Monstrous Invisible, this play about Lovecraft and his wife. And it started off as a short one act, and it's kind of exploded, and it's I think now the full version of it is a full-length play. But that was really what got me into it. And I have to admit, I come to Lovecraft late. I did not discover him in high school, or in some yellowed book, dog-eared book that my uncle had. I was aware of the game. I think I bought the Mythos collectible card game at one point, but I didn't start reading Lovecraft until my 20s, and I didn't start playing him until this play. So I'm definitely a Johnny-come-lately to the whole Lovecraft world, which is useful in some ways because I don't have that like defensiveness or like that kind of like idol worship of him. But at the same time, I also sometimes feel like when people have really intense, deep questions that dig into the root of Lovecraft, that's when I say, well, the reanimation process was very strenuous, and that part of my brain has been dissolved.
There you go. Trevpocalypse. Guess I'll repeat my question from earlier. For Leeman, I don't know if this has been asked before, but what's your favorite and least favorite Lovecraft work?
I really like At the Mountains of Madness. I think that was one of the first ones I read, and it captures so much of what is good in Lovecraft. The interest in science, the interest in technology and in progress, but also this cosmic dread of a larger, more alien existence. He does a really good job of showing the mechanics of the folks going out to Antarctica and the exploration and using the sort of the science and of the day. It's a really well put together story. And as for stuff I don't like, any of the like early stories where it gets to the end and it goes, and it was a man, and you're like, yeah, I could tell it was a man, like duh, right? Like you telegraphed that ending 8 pages ago, which isn't fair because a lot of it is cliche, only because people are going back to Lovecraft and it wasn't cliche when he was doing it. But also anything with a white ape, that's just
my god, yeah, those
so many white apes.
What was it, the Ganath There's something I can't remember what that damn thing was called.
Oh, it looks like we got a correction on a previous question. Rick Classic actually wanted to know P.H. Lovecraft, not H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Sorry. P.H. Lovecraft came out of the fact that I went. So I started this around June 2012, and then that August I took a road trip to Tennessee to see my family, and I didn't shave. Doing Lovecraft, my wife loves it because it means I have to shave constantly, and I can't grow out my awesome beard. I don't have an awesome beard, but I didn't shave for this trip to Tennessee, and then when I got back to Canada, I sort of looked at my face and said, "Huh," and I shaved down until I just had a little goatee and mustache, and said, "Evil twin." And that was literally it. It was literally the fact that I had a goatee and was so lazy that I decided to do an evil twin episode. And I really like PH. PH lets me I can do my awful House of Cards accent. But I can also comment on things in an interesting way. I have now a stock racism episode. That's a drunken PH having to stumble through his thoughts on racism and H.P. Lovecraft's racism, and that just lets me talk about his racism in a really honest way, as opposed to having H.P. Lovecraft be like, why were you so racist? Well, I don't think I was so racist.
Right.
I'll tell you why. So yeah, I like PH a lot. He also is how I do book reviews, because I think I get sent a lot of books, and I have a lot of friends who write books, and so I'll read a book and be like, I want to talk about it on the show. That was a lot of fun. But I don't necessarily want to have H.P. Lovecraft comment on it, be like, you're obviously stealing from me. So having PH Lovecraft, who can be snide and silly and snarky but also genuinely give my opinions on some of the books I read, is a lot of fun. So he gives me a bit more freedom and lets me do different things. And then when I'm really tired of Lovecraft, I do have my Carl Sagan impersonation, which I have forced on people multiple times.
Beautiful. Alrighty then. Richard in the chat asks, for everyone, should Ridley Scott be removed from his own Alien franchise?
Wow. Yeah, let's start with Leeman on that one. Do you have an answer?
I mean, Alien and Aliens, and even, I even liked Aliens 3. I'm going to be that guy. All of that I really, really loved. But Prometheus, I know people love Prometheus, and I know people who love Prometheus want to explain to you why they love Prometheus and why you have to watch Lawrence of Arabia 8 times before you'll truly appreciate it. That being said,
what?
Yeah.
Wait for.
Apparently, that's
oh
my
God! Ah! I never noticed that. Oh my God! I hate that. Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm so pissed off.
Right?
God, that is the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like it's the 2010s. I feel like we don't need to keep impregnating women with aliens against their will. I feel like that's been done. And so, whatevs. Ridley Scott, he can do what he wants. But yeah, I don't have a huge horse. I don't have a huge dog in that fight.
How about you, Josh?
I guess so. I don't know. He can keep making movies. I just wish he wouldn't get in the way of sequels that actually sound pretty interesting. Like the one that fucking the guy who did District 9 was working on sounded really awesome. Camp. Yeah. His sequel sounded really cool, and the fact that it's delayed for Ridley's sequel to Prometheus really makes me sad.
Yeah. But I'll say this. I will probably be able to not worry about those sequels. But I'm going to tell you the thing I am fucking dreading. I am dreading that Blade Runner sequel. Holy crap.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, that Blade Runner, that movie means a lot to me. I love that movie. I go back to that movie still, and I'm like, oh, It's one of those films where it's so layered, you can watch it 20 years later and still find
Now, did you enjoy the updated version where they got Harrison Ford's son to do the cleaned up audio for him?
Oh, was that the one that they cut like 3 years ago?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't watched that cut. I've watched the theatrical and the original director's cut, but I haven't watched the 2 cuts that came afterwards, because there are 4 cuts of that movie. Because it's Ridley Scott, and of course there are 4 cuts of that movie. Oh man!
Alrighty then. Ibrahim Hassan asks, question for everyone: have any of you guys seen the Transformers anime?
Oh, I thought you were about to say Transformers animated movie, and I was about to get really excited.
Well, you mean just basically the Japanese show?
I don't know.
I'm going to assume that's what he means.
I have not seen it, so I am unaware.
Unless there's something newer?
Yeah, unless there's something newer. I'm assuming he's talking about the Japanese run of the Transformers television show that happened in the 80s, because that is, in fact, different than the American one.
Oh.
Yeah. It gets to, how to put it, like, everything more or less syncs up until you get to the 3rd season. There are a few episodes that they don't air because the show was originally made for an American audience by Japanese animators. But when you get to the 3rd season, it gets weird, because that's the one that's done after the first animated movie, which of course redefined the Transformers, because like certain characters are dead. Now we're in the future, the far off future of 2005, and other stuff is happening. But here's the thing: after the 3rd season of Transformers here, it massively diverges, because it didn't lose popularity in Japan the way it did in America. In America, it just kind of dead stops and then enters the world of future nostalgia. But in Japan, it was actually maintained popularity, so they kept doing the show. So there are like 3 seasons of the show using the characters from Transformers, the movie that was done in the 80s. And then that gradually turns into Beast Wars that was done in Japan, which was a cell animated cartoon. And if you're like, why are there all these action figures for characters that never appeared on Beast Wars? It's because they were in the Japanese show. Like, they had this whole thing, and it was really, really bizarre, because when I mean it was a continuation, I don't mean like, all right, we're stopping and now we're once again doing a different story about Cybertron. I mean, like, it's flat out like Rodimus Prime and Ultra Magnus show up on a planet that's got like animal transformers. And that's how they did it. And then that show kept going for a while. I think it eventually did stop in like the mid 2000s. And they did some really, really weird divergences. Like, there was one called Transformers Kiss, which just makes this is gonna bake your brain. So here's the concept of Transformers Kiss. First of all, the name is, okay. So the idea is that Transformers and little anime idol singers have gotten together and formed a band. Now, that's already awful, but it gets worse, because in order for the robots to transform, the little idol singer girls who are like 10 and 12 have to kiss the robots. It's really uncomfortable and weird. And I saw one episode and I'm like, nope, done, nope, so much nope, off.
I'm out of here.
Yeah,
okay.
Alrighty then. Rick Classic comes in with a sick burn. Hasn't he only made 1 Alien movie? Ooh.
Oh, well, yeah, technically.
Jimmy Lamb asks, okay, don't kill me, but if you had to marathon either the remake of Martyrs for 8 hours with no break or pass a kidney stone, which would you choose, Jack?
That's not fair, because I guarantee if I passed a kidney stone, it would be a kidney stone shape of a Martyrs remake DVD. So I don't really think it's a fair question, man. I don't know. I really have to think about that. I think realistically, what I would probably do is assume that you were behind all the pain in my life and blow your head off with a shotgun because, oh God, that Martyrs remake is bad. I don't know. Wait. Did you say 8 times or 8 hours?
8 hours.
8
8
hours?
hours? Okay, well, that's only 5.5 viewings. I might be able to make it. I might be able to make it. If I had to watch it 8 times,
Eight
that
times
might
too
be
much.
a problem.
Alrighty then. Wishmaster98 wants to ask Lovecraft, have you ever played the Arkham Horror board game?
I have, and you can go watch video of H.P. Lovecraft playing the Arkham Horror board game. It was, I think, either my summer special or last year's Christmas special. But yes, you can see H.P. Lovecraft playing a nun.
There you go. The Surfacing wants Jack to love him daddy. I'm moving on to the next question.
Yeah, move on. I ain't your daddy, kid. There ain't a paternity test in the world that can prove it.
The cartoon physicist's naughty
But I did
list.
fuck your mother.
The cartoon physicist naughty list wants to know, have you seen Machete Maidens Unleashed, a documentary about exploitation films made in the Philippines? I haven't.
No.
That sounds awesome.
I couldn't name an exploitation film made in the Philippines.
Neither could I. That's
I believe Mystics of...
oh, nice. There you go.
Pretty sure that was done in the Philippines.
Wait, was
Might-
Apocalypse Now done in the Philippines? If so, that's the exploitation movie I've seen.
Actually, I think that was done in...
No, it was filmed. It was filmed in I think in Central America or somewhere where there was a government, putting down rebels, which is why they couldn't use helicopters for like one shot. Man, nothing makes me want to just punch a Coppola in the face harder than Hearts of Darkness. Well, I made the I had to watch that for a film course, and I made the mistake of watching that after having watched the making of Dark Crystal.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, just seeing Coppola just, like, bitch and moan for an hour and a half and just scream at everyone after seeing, Henson and Frank Oz just, like, being so charming about this money pit that they made. It just, it was brutal.
Hey, Coppola was, he's a high-strung guy.
My movie's not about Vietnam. My movie is Vietnam. Calm down.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Coppola's intense. He's a big dude. Like, he's of all those filmmakers, he's the most intimidating because the man was built like a linebacker.
Alrighty then. Richard in the chat wants to ask Lovecraft, what is a good first Lovecraft story? He loves the idea, but has never read the books.
So good Lovecraft, you can get all of them. There are a bunch of them available to free to read online at hplovecraft.com. I think good ones to start with are I have what's my pat answer. Dunnage Horror is pretty good. Oh, Color Out of Time, not Color Out of Town.
Space.
Gonna yell at me.
Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space, I think, is probably the best as far as just like getting this taste of weirdness and cosmic horror. The Outsider is a nice, really short story, which I got to hear Jeffrey Combs read at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, and that was a lot of fun.
Super jealous.
It was so weird though because everyone was like, Jeffrey Combs, we love you in Reanimator, we love you in Reanimator. I was like, I haven't seen Reanimator because I'm a fake Lovecraft fan, but I love you as Wayoon.
There you go. All right, Xeroxtable, which has to win an award for hard to pronounce names, wants to ask Lovecraft, do you have any favorite authors outside of Lovecraft?
Oh yeah, tons. I mean, Lovecraft is a fun character to play, but I don't pull his books off the shelf. I really love Lois McMaster Bujold. I'm reading her newest Vorkosigan saga book right now, but Cordelia's Honor and Curse of Shalion are two absolutely amazing books, especially if you like George R. R. Martin, but wish they were shorter and better written.
Shots fired.
That being said, I also like George R. R. Martin. Tough Voyaging is a great book, a great sci-fi book I would really recommend for folks. And and I like Gaiman and Pratchett. I mean, the role that Lovecraft plays in a lot of folks' lives, being something they discovered in high school that like meant everything to them. That was Pratchett. Like, that was who I was reading in high school and who I was absorbing and loving. So I would say, if I had to, especially in terms of celebrity deaths that have impacted me the most. I mean, I think Pratchett's is probably in the last few years the one that's really just hit me hard.
Actually, Leeman, having mentioned Terry Pratchett, I have to ask: did you watch the BBC adaptation of The Hogfather?
I've seen Hogfather, and I started. I definitely have seen Hogfather, but what I love are the animated movies they made of Soul Music and Weird Sisters.
Oh, I haven't seen either of those.
With Christopher Lee as the voice of death. You can't talk to me like that. I'm the king.
That's nice casting.
What's that?
It's called the past tense. Get used to it.
So, and I didn't love Hogfather. The guy who played Tiatima really kind of bugged me, but then I really liked him as the man with thistledown hair in the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell miniseries that just was aired. So yeah.
All right, Ibrahim Hassan. Question for everyone: what do you guys think of Jeffrey Combs?
I love what he.
Jack and I are pretty big fans of
Yeah. Like Jeffrey Combs quite a bit. Like every time, I think like the for me, it's always going to be my favorite performance is always going to be Reanimator, even though he has technically done better performances of other things. Like when he did his one-man show of
Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe, yeah, that was really good. Like he was really good in that.
I gotta go.
It was interesting hearing him talk at the film festival because you definitely got the sense that he was saddened that didn't go further.
Yeah.
He was really hoping to have been able to do more with that. And it was also that it was that interesting seeing a celebrity because I go to these things and I'm YouTube famous, but I'm not.
You're not.
I'm able to kind of
movie
and sort of see sort of folks hovering around him and to see that discomfort at feeling kind of pigeonholed in a horror crowd. That definitely came across. And he was very gracious and he was, very personable, but you definitely there was an edge that, he doesn't see himself as a horror actor. And so to kind of be one of the horror actors, and maybe not in a way that like, I feel like a Robert Englund has probably made a lot of peace with.
Oh, yes.
And has a lot of fun with it. And so that was interesting to see.
The cartoon physicist Naughty List wants to thank you for the cameo, Leeman. So
yes, I made a quick little cameo for her a while back, and that was my pleasure.
There you go. Connor, question: what's your opinion of people who don't like horror but say they love The Shining? Those people are in the horror closet, in my opinion.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think I've come across folks who say that. I can imagine someone liking The Shining as an example of film or seeing it as especially if you think of horror as purely slasher and not just like weird surrealism, what have you. Or unless they're the people who like it because it's telling you that the moon landings were faked.
Oh God. Or was it Room 237? Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
Oh God.
Oh God. We fucking saw that at the Roxy Theater because we were like, oh, it'll be a documentary about all these crazy conspiracy theories. That's kind of fun. And then it just was the conspiracy theories. And I'm like, I want all these people to shut up. I can't take this.
Yeah, I just couldn't handle it. After a while, I'm just like, no, like, are you kidding me? That is not a Minotaur. That is a guy skiing down a mountain. Are you blind?
Now, what do we think about the chickening, however?
Chickening is great. 10 out of 10. Best picture. Oscar.
All right, Monster Hunter 971 wants to ask Lovecraft, have you ever read Shadows Bend? It's about H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard going on an adventure.
Oh, no, I have not read that. I've read a couple of different comic books like Herald, which is Lovecraft and Tesla fighting monsters, and Three Kingdoms, which is little baby H.P. Lovecraft and his dad and Pet Cthulhu fighting monsters. But no, I haven't. I haven't heard of that. That sounds fun.
That the name of that is how is that actually called? Did you say it was Howard's End? The title of it?
Shadows Bend.
Oh, Shadows Bend. Okay.
But Howard's End is already a thing.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah.
Oh, actually, if folks here are fans of both H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard, I cannot recommend enough a story that they worked on together called The Challenge from Beyond. It was one of these, what is it, beautiful monstrosity things or whatever, where like one person starts the story and the second person takes off, and it like keeps going down the line.
An Exquisite Corpse?
Yeah, exquisite. Yeah, thank you. H.P. Lovecraft wrote a segment, and then Robert E. Howard picked up where it took off, and the juxtaposition of the two is one of the most beautiful things. In fact, I did a video of HP and PH reading their versions of it. But it's a Challenge from Beyond, definitely worth checking out.
That would be a really strange juxtaposition, because you have Lovecraft, who was like, no, like humankind is just but a speck in the cosmos. And Robert E. Howard's fiction was like, look, with enough manliness, you can just do anything.
And that's exactly what happens. Like a human brain gets transported into an alien body, and it's so Lovecraft is all this like, oh, now I'm a monster and I've lost my humanity and oh, the horror. And then Robert E. Howard picks up is like, but wait, with free of my human body, I'm free from human morals. I will make myself king.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, Isaac in the chat, I guess he's asking everyone, what would be your ideal horror TV show?
Midnight Monster Movies hosted by Leeman Kessler as H.P. Lovecraft.
There you go.
There you go.
The first 5 seasons of Supernatural already covered for me.
The Sexual Escapades of the Bride of Frankenstein.
Okay, there you go. All right, Ethan Tone wants to ask Lovecraft, if you could make a young adult book series but use Lovecraft characters, what would you make and why?
Young adult book series. Well, there's a lot of horrible ways you could go with this. High school, girls' school adventures of Asenath Waite from Thing on the Doorstep would probably be the worst possible thing you could do. So I'll go with that.
All right, there we go. All right, Jimmy Lamb wants to get real serious here. I know it's been touched upon, and since Jack is Asian, when you read about what Lovecraft and people like him talked about ethnic cleansing and stuff, how did that make you feel? How does that make you feel?
Look, when you grow up and in ethnic minority, especially if you are of mixed race descent, particularly if it's not an ethnicity that they can just put on a census form, because let's face it, if you're a little bit black, the census wants you to say you're all black. But if you're like let's just say if you're part Asian, when that kind of thing happens, I was just like, oh, another one. You just get real used to it, man. Like, you're just like, yeah, another guy in history that I admire that would have hated me. Whatever. What would you have done? I would have been like, probably the same reaction I would have said to, like, people that I admired in real life who were assholes. Fuck you, buddy. But then still, like, continue to, like, homage their work,
All right, the Slafer Chi T question. Since you're doing this stream with Ask Lovecraft, could you talk a little bit about Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness? I love that movie.
That movie is great.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, man.
And I have a friend who is in it.
Oh, who was he?
The bald guy who like attacks them in the restaurant, I think.
Oh,
do you read Sutter Kane?
He's one of my acting jobs in Toronto was called standardized patienting, where you do simulations with med students, and so he was a guy I did those with, and he is the sweetest, most just charming, guy in the world. But yeah, he's pretty awesome.
That guy is an icon.
Yeah.
One line, and it's just like, no, forever. His legacy is secure.
Yeah.
All right.
No, Conrad's an absolute just again, he's so, his face is so evocative, and just everything about it is this, this imposing, powerful guy. But yeah, you can just, he's one of the like sweetest guys in the world.
Well, I love that whole performance, that whole brief performance, because the double iris, I'm like, that double iris is really just window dressing to the fact that he's staring, Sam Neill down like, so intensely. He almost didn't need that, Man. Yeah, In the Mouth of Madness, I really, really, really love that movie. To be honest, I mean, let's be really honest, that movie is an homage to Lovecraft, but we know that Sutter Kane is actually way more Stephen King than H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, he's an amalgamation of both.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But
he's Lovecraft if Lovecraft had Stephen King levels of popularity.
Yeah.
Let's be thankful we didn't see that.
Yeah, let's be thankful Stephen King wasn't, despite what people think, Stephen King actually not a racist at all.
No. Stephen King is an author you can actually be happy about.
Yeah.
All right. Connor Logan has a question for Jack specifically.
All right.
I just bought The French Martyrs on Amazon. After everything I've heard about it from you and Guru, how should I prepare for watching it?
All right. Here's the two things. Always keep the pause button handy. The next thing you need to do is make sure you have tissues near you. And do not... If you get through the movie in multiple sittings, I will not think less of you. You don't have to get through it all at once, but I'm going to tell you there are going to be a few times you probably get a breakdown once. Because the way they do everything, they get across the pain of these two girls so well. You have to identify with it. It's why that's why there were riots after that movie premiered, because it just gets you to that point, and it's crazy that it's able to do that.
All right, the cartoon physicist Naughty List has a question for Jack as well. Since you're a fan of Blue Demon, have you watched Lucha Underground?
No, I haven't watched that movie. I haven't watched it. I've seen a lot of Blue Demon, the movies that Blue Demon himself was in. But I haven't seen. I should fix that.
Mad Fresh Son has a question for everyone. What horror movie tropes do you hate? I'm going to go with I hate every time a modern horror movie has to address a cell phone.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like, I almost wish they would pretend they don't exist just so we don't have to deal with that crap.
All horror movies just stop at like 1998 and just like never progress.
Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Like with I mentioned with Prometheus, I think sexual assault stuff has been overdone and done. And one of the things I really appreciated about Hannibal was that they were very straightforward about the fact that, look, crime shows, horror shows are just so dependent on rape and sexual assault, and we don't need to. Like, that's just it's unnecessary. It's part
when you got cannibalism.
Well, precisely, which is its own sort of its own violation. But yeah, I think it's overdone, and I think it's done more for titillation than it is for any real shock value anymore. So
yeah, I would actually disagree. I actually don't think it's done for titillation. I just think it's been done because much better people have done it, and people want filmmakers want to be have the part of that cachet of having been able to done a really good scene like that. But the problem is that it's really hard to do those scenes well. Like, the actors have to go to a bad place, the crew's got to go to a bad place, the director's got to go to a bad place, all just to make it work. And that's really hard, and there are very few people and very few crews and very few actors that can do that because it is so grueling. Every great movie that has had a great rape scene, one that was really effective and just curdled your stomach, has almost all those breakdowns. And one of them, the funny thing is the person who had the director that had the best line on it was Rob Zombie. Because he didn't have a full-on rape scene, but he had a definitive sexual assault scene.
Are you talking about Kiss for Daddy? Because that is probably the worst thing I've ever seen.
No. It wasn't Kiss for Daddy. It was The Devil's Rejects. There's a scene where, oh crap, what's the name of the character? Or the actor? Fuck. He played Chop Top.
Fuck. Guys.
I see him at every goddamn convention. Anyway, the guy who plays, now I'm spacing on the character. Fuck. Otis P. Driftwood. There's a scene where Otis P. Driftwood is forcing a woman to just get in his lap. And
Bill Moseley.
Bill Moseley, thank you. And it is so uncomfortable and so upsetting and so disturbing. And at the end of it, he was like, Rob, I don't know. This is so evil and so despicable. I don't know if I can do it. And Rob was like, Bill, art's not safe. You got to do another take. It's like, oh, and he's like, all right, he's right. Art's not safe. Got to do it. But the problem is because it is so hard to do, but it provides such a great visceral reaction. People try to do it, and they try to do it badly. And I've seen movies where it was done for like just to have naked flesh on the screen, but I haven't seen a lot of those recently. Most of those were made during like the Canon era, and those are weird how they're handled in that one because they're almost non-rape scenes. It's very strange.
Well, it's the mindlessness, right? Like you think about the tree scene in Evil Dead, and it comes out of nowhere, and it's just like I mean, again, it's almost played for laughs, and then there's no repercussion or any there's no it's not dwelt on. It's just like let's have her tied up and then stick a broom between her legs.
Yeah, it's about let's shock the audience, let's get that reaction.
And I don't know. I think there's a discomfort in not a good way, and I guess it goes back to that boys club mentality that can sometimes linger in horror.
Yeah, it can, but I don't have a problem with that. But if you want to see the counterexample, the Evil Dead remake that they did fully justified that scene, and I was really impressed that they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they made it narratively and metaphorically work completely. Because that is a story about violation.
So there we go. Lord Volkos, off topic. I just thought about, but off topic because I just thought about it today. What is your opinion of the movie Cry Wolf?
I fucking hate that movie. I fucking despise that fucking movie. My fucking God. That was one of the movies that I watched where I was like, that's it. Horror's over. I'm done. Forget this. Fuck this. If this is what we're going to be doing, I'm out. I can't stand this anymore. I don't like that movie very much.
The cartoon physicist Naughty List wants to know if any of us have watched Corman's World, and I have, and it's awesome.
I don't think I have watched that.
Corman's World, Exploits of a Hollywood Rebel. It's a documentary on Roger Corman. Yeah. It's made a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. I should definitely check that. Roger Corman, there are a lot of guys that I admire, not for the quality of their work, but just because they just become fascinating figures, and Roger Corman's one of them. I love Roger Corman's whole sleazy attitude. It's so nasty. You're like, I feel like I'm watching. I don't feel like I'm watching a man. I feel like I'm watching a dark god work. His whole thing about, all right, now go out there and go out there and get it. I need you to get it today. Just film on the freeway. But what if we get arrested? Get arrested. It'll be great publicity. Whoa. Roger Corman did not give a fuck.
He was a god.
It's like the Werner Herzog talking about how, filmmakers should not go to film schools. They should instead work as a bouncer at a sex club or go to work in an asylum. You don't need to learn about camera shots. You need to learn about how to forge camera paperwork and licenses.
Oh my God, I've told this story in this. a bad lieutenant protocol. Okay, so here's the story behind it. For those of you who don't know, Nicolas Cage gets in the water of water post Hurricane Katrina to get a prisoner out of a jail cell. And it's really incongruous with the rest of the movie because you're like, this seems really cheap in comparison, and there's like a fade to black, and it's really awkward. Okay, the reason it's that way is because that shot was done before Werner Herzog had a movie to go with it. He grabbed Nicolas Cage and a couple other SAG actors, went down to New Orleans, found a police station, and filmed in it. And the floodwater is real. That is Hurricane Katrina that they're in the middle of. And as Nicolas Cage is like, Werner, why are we doing this? Werner Herzog just goes, no permits. You're like,
Yep.
what?
Yep. Man's amazing. He also has the greatest. He has the greatest defensive football for a nerd ever.
I gotta hear this.
He talks about how football is the most amazing game because unlike other sports where you have a spherical ball that bounces in an abstract direction, the football has a caprice about it. It is chaos.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Jimmy Lamb in the chat. It comes at us with another super serious question that we must answer for the good of mankind. Fuck, marry, kill. Lovecraft, Rod Serling, or Stephen King?
Lovecraft, because I'm already doing it. Am I right, folks?
There you go.
King, Rod Serling.
Alrighty then. Jack?
All right. Probably fuck Rod Serling because that man obviously had a dirty mind. Might be good. Marry Stephen King because are you kidding? That guy is loaded. And kill because we all know that Lovecraft didn't become famous until posthumously.
Actually,
thank you, intestine cancer.
That is the exact order I was going to go with, so we can move on. All right. The Slafer asks, question for everyone. What is the best Lovecraftian anime you know of, and would you believe me if I told you that a children's anime called Digimon Tamers has Lovecraftian elements and imagery? I would believe it because I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
The only Lovecraft anime I know of directly is Nyarko-san, or whatever the one where Nyalit Odep is like a Japanese schoolgirl.
Oh yeah, I heard
Yeah.
I get a lot of questions about that.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. Probably the one that I've seen that I would consider Lovecraftian. Is probably a very strange answer, which would probably be Boogie Pop Phantom.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because that one, it's not that it's got like monsters with tentacles or anything, but the thing that's very Lovecraftian about Boogie Pop Phantom is that it's a monster that's a rumor. And so but here's the twist. Monsters do exist in that world. But you've got a monster that is literally a rumor. It's an abstract concept. And the fact that there's a monster that is literally an evil abstract concept felt very Lovecraftian to me.
I go for sort of cosmic, just like dread and kind of technophobia. I'd almost say Serial Experiment Lane would be one for me.
Oh my god, I love that.
And it's not anime. It's not anime, but it is a manga and a movie. Uzumaki.
I was gonna go with Uzumaki, so I guess that
unless they made an anime of it, but I only knew the manga.
Serial Experiment Lane reminded me, did remind me a bit of the tone of my favorite Lovecraft story, which was Shadow Out of Time. You know, because it's a story essentially all about the mind.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. Jimmy Lamb has another question. Grudge match: Cthulhu versus Godzilla. Who wins? And what's your logic behind it? Well, I feel like for me, the first question you have to ask is Godzilla affected by Cthulhu's ability to drive someone insane?
Would that even matter?
Would it even matter? Would Godzilla insane even affect that?
It's really
not a question of who wins, because we all know who loses.
Yes.
Ever.
Yeah.
Humanity is gone.
Like,
Is Godzilla driving a boat that he can just bump into Cthulhu and like put him back to sleep? Because that is the unfortunate weakness of Cthulhu.
well, him and Jaws got that same problem.
But if Cthulhu does like bird noises, then that can throw Godzilla's game off.
Yes. That was
My whole knowledge of Godzilla is completely
so weird.
My knowledge of Godzilla is completely thrown off because the only Godzilla that I watched consistently as a child was Godzilla 1985.
Yeah.
So
That was
like,
a weird one.
Like, unless Raymond Burr is involved, I don't know.
All right, the cartoon physicist naughty list. Oh wait, that's not a question. Never mind. Moving on. Okay, Rick Classic. What does everyone think of the Transformers animated movie? So we finally got that question. It's a great movie.
Dare to believe.
Dare to believe you can survive.
You got the
Powers in your hand.
Did you listen to the bizarre remake of You've Got the Touch with who did they bring on board for it? They brought on Linkin Park as well. Like they did it for the new movies. They brought back dude who did it before, Stan Bush or whoever, but it's like it's slower and in a different key, and then you've got like Linkin Park like doing their rap rock like in the middle of it.
Yeah, I'm like, no, that song has to be power metal 100%.
You have to believe that lasers are shooting out of guitars when you're listening to that.
Yes.
They should have got Dragon Force. I'm just saying it now.
Oh man, Dragon Force covering that would have been awesome. You know, fucking do a speed metal cover of that. That could have worked.
Hell yeah.
You know?
Connor Logan, question for Guru and Jack. Sam and Dean versus Cassie, Hack, and Vlad. Who do you think would win, and would you want to see that? I think the fact of the matter is no one would win because they would just team up together and kill whatever monster of the week happens to be brought them together.
Yeah, that's what happened. They would fight and then they would get along.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's how those team ups go.
And actually, I think the real question is, would Cassie awkwardly hit on one of the guys? That's I think the real question.
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, because like depending on how old Cassie is supposed to be would determine whether or not Dean was interested in her.
Yeah, like Dean and Cassie would make the most sense, but Cassie has a lot to relate to with Sam, so I don't know.
Really hard to watch if you watched a lot of Gilmore Girls because they keep calling Dean Sam.
Yeah.
And they call some other guy, I don't know who is, Dean, and he's not. But luckily Rory is nowhere nearby, so...
I had the same problem when I first watched Supernatural. Alrighty then. Jimmy Lamb, have any of you guys read the Vampire Hunter D novels? Just curious.
I have not. I know they exist, I just haven't read them.
I have not either. All right, the Cult Dude. Given some of the 80s horror icons like Chucky, Jason, Freddy, Maniac Cop, Myers, and the Tall Man are coming back for conclusions or remakes within the next few years, can we expect more? Well, as long as they keep making money, we can expect more.
Yeah.
I won't rest until we have more Critters.
Oh man, Critters!
I'll totally do a Critters revival.
Wow, yeah.
Just to give you guys a heads up, it is East Coast here, so I'm going to have to jet in about 5 minutes if anyone has any final questions for Lovecraft or myself.
Alrighty then, everyone, on your mark, get set, go. Give us your final questions.
Do.
Time delay.
Done. Gotta wait.
All right. The Red Rune wants to know how would all of us react to the Fine Brothers situation with their trademark.
How would we react to it?
I've already reacted on Twitter. I think it's stupid. So
I think the whole thing's dumb because I'm like, why did we need your permission to begin with? What are you actually trying to pull here?
Yeah.
You know. And that's basically it, you know.
Trademarking the idea of a React video is kind of shady.
Oh, are these the patent trolls, like the guys who were trying to like patent the idea of a podcast?
Yeah.
Except these guys did it for React videos because they're the guys who do like Elders React and like Teens React. They do those videos, and so they basically they're giving you the ability to license out their React brand, and by doing that, they trademarked the word React.
Yeah, so it was like super weird. It was like, well, what are you doing for people at all? Like, it's if it was like, hey, sign this thing, and if we take you on, then we give you stuff. That would be okay, but like it's like we're giving. It's like, oh, you can do this now. It's like, well, you could do that already. What
Yeah, that's weird.
What's going on? It's really strange.
All right, Lovecraft. What is the weirdest adaptation of your work? Weird even by your standards, asks Sean Murphy.
Well, I mean, there's all the sex toys that people make.
There you go. Yeah.
I was approached about trying to do a cross-promotional marital aid deal, but I decided it was a little off-brand. Although, with PH around, anything's possible.
All right, let's get one more question in. Mansion of Madness or Eldritch Horror?
Oh, I've not played either of them. I just got Betrayal at the House of the Hill, which I'm interested in looking at.
That game is the concept of that game is really cool.
Yeah, I've played it once and I enjoyed it, but I've not done Eldritch Horror. I've done a lot of Arkham Horror, which is a lot. It's a lot of moving pieces and it's a lot of setup for not a huge amount of payoff. But
yeah, because a monster almost invariably wins, or you just run out of time. It's like, guys, I gotta go home. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's definitely one that you have to like play just forever. We definitely when we did the playing of Arkham Horror for and Derek's in that episode actually. Both Derek and Tom, he is an evil genius, are in my play of Arkham Horror. Yeah, it was just like and then Cthulhu attacks.
Alrighty then. Question: what horror movie did you watch as a child that had a huge impact on you? And this is for everybody.
Cemetery Man. I can date my life.
Cemetery Man.
I can date my life like 80 BC crossover, like before seeing Cemetery Man and after.
I gotta go with Aliens for me.
I've said this a million times. John Carpenter's The Thing. Yeah. Oh God, Cemetery Man.
That movie's so good.
Yeah. So fun. Yeah. Nug. God. Like just the way that whole movie is done, I loved it.
Yeah.
It's this beautiful it's this beautiful gothic romance that is also this really bloody comedy.
Well, and just Rupert Everett is amazing, and the Italian, just everything just about it is sexy and gross in that just beautiful way.
Alrighty then, I think we should probably close up shop now. Everyone at home, save your questions for next time. And if you have more questions for Lovecraft, you can go to his channel and ask them on his channel because he does do a show where he answers them.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, if you're interested, you can follow Ask Lovecraft on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr. My Tumblr fans are a curious bunch.
They usually are.
And yeah, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you guys so much for asking me on.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure having you. You take care now. We'll probably do this again at some point.
Yeah, anytime. It was great.
All right, take care.